Last month, a traveler at Chicago O'Hare watched a TSA officer confiscate a $38 bottle of face serum. And the worst part wasn't losing the product. It was the fact that 3 days earlier, flying out of Phoenix Sky Harbor, that exact same bottle passed through screening without a single question asked. Same bottle, same traveler. Two completely different outcomes. That story is not unusual. In fact, it's happening at airports across the country right now, and the reason is something the major travel outlets aren't explaining clearly. People are walking into 2026 with outdated information, conflicting advice, and a genuine misunderstanding of what has changed versus what hasn't at TSA checkpoints. And that confusion is costing travelers their belongings, their time, and in some cases, their flight. So let's fix that today. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to walk you through exactly what the TSA liquid situation looks like right now. The actual federal rule. The technology that's changing your checkpoint experience airport by airport. The items getting confiscated most often, the exceptions most travelers don't know they qualify for, and a packing system you can use starting on your very next trip that makes this whole thing simple and repeatable. By the time this is over, you'll understand the situation better than 90% of the people standing in security lines with you. Let's start by naming the real crisis here, because it's not what the headline might suggest. The TSA liquids rule has not changed in 2026, let me say that again clearly, because the amount of misinformation floating around travel forums, comment sections, and even some news outlets would make you think there was some dramatic federal overhaul last January. There wasn't. The federal standard, the rule that applies at every TSA checkpoint in the United States, is the same 3-to-1 rule that has been in place since 2006. 3.4 ounces maximum per container. All containers must fit in one clear, quart-sized zip-top bag. One bag per passenger. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the checkpoint experience itself. And here is the critical distinction that nobody is making clearly enough. A different experience at security does not equal different rules. Those two things are not the same, and conflating them is exactly why a traveler in Phoenix sails through while a traveler in Chicago loses their product. The rule is federal and uniform. The screening technology is not. This is the crisis. Not a new law. A massive gap between what travelers expect and what they actually encounter depending on which airport, which terminal, and sometimes which specific lane they happen to walk into. Before we get into why that gap exists, let me give you a clean, current picture of what the 3-1-1 rule actually requires as of April 2026. Because even among travelers who think they know the rule, there are common misreadings that lead to confiscations. The rule covers liquids, gels, aerosols, creams, and pastes. That last category trips people up constantly. If it spreads, smears, or flows, TSA considers it a liquid. That means your toothpaste is a liquid. Your face moisturizer is a liquid. Your hair gel, your styling cream, your shaving foam, your lip gloss. All liquids under the federal definition. Each container must hold no more than 3.4 ounces, which is 100 milliliters. That's the size of a standard travel bottle. And here's something that surprises a lot of people. The container limit is about the container's total capacity, not how much is left inside. A 4-ounce bottle of shampoo that is 90% empty is still a 4-ounce bottle. It doesn't pass. If the label says 4 ounces, check it. All of those compliant containers must fit inside one quart-sized clear bag. Not 2 bags, not a gallon bag, a quart. If you've ever seen the 1-quart freezer bags at the grocery store, that's approximately the right size. TSA sells them. You can buy off-brand versions anywhere, and the brand doesn't matter as long as the size is right. 1 bag, per passenger. That applies to every adult in your travel group individually. Everything else, the larger bottles, the full-size products, anything over 3.4 ounces, goes in your checked bag. If you don't have a checked bag, and you've got a full-size conditioner in your carry-on, that item doesn't make the flight with you. That's the rule. That part is simple. Where things get complicated is everything happening around it. Here's where the confusion is actually coming from. And once you understand this, Everything else we talk about today will make sense. By early 2026, over 90% of major US airports, including Atlanta, Los Angeles, Chicago O'Hare, and JFK in New York, had replaced their traditional X-ray screening machines with what's called CT scanning technology. Computed tomography. These are the same type of three-dimensional imaging machines used in medical facilities, and they give TSA officers a rotating, full three-dimensional image of everything inside your bag, rather than the flat, two-dimensional image the old X-ray machines produced. What does that mean practically? With CT scanners, officers can see through and around objects inside your carry-on far more clearly than before. They can identify liquids with much greater precision. And because of that improved visibility, TSA policy at CT-equipped lanes has shifted. In many of those lanes, you no longer need to remove your quart-sized liquids bag from your carry-on before it goes through the machine. Read that again, because it matters. You may not need to take your bag out. That is the change. Your liquids stay packed, the bag goes through, the officers see everything clearly on their screen, and you move on. That sounds like a big deal, and in terms of convenience, it is. But here's what hasn't changed. You still have to have compliant liquids inside that bag. The 3.4-ounce limit is still active. The quart-sized bag is still required. CT technology does not give you permission to bring a full-size bottle of anything. It just means you don't have to unpack your compliant items to prove they're compliant. The confusion happens because travelers hear, you don't have to take out your liquids bag anymore, and their brain fills in, so the old rules must not apply. That's not what it means. At airports where CT scanning is fully deployed, you still need to pack exactly the way you always have. You just don't have to perform that ritual unpacking at the bin anymore. At airports that haven't yet completed the CT rollout, the old requirement is still fully in effect, and you will be asked to pull that bag out and set it in the tray. And here's the critical thing most travel guides miss. Even within a single airport, CT-equipped lanes and traditional lanes can exist side by side. One terminal might be fully upgraded, another might not. You won't know until you get there. That's why the traveler in Phoenix sailed through, while the traveler in Chicago had a different experience. Chicago O'Hare is a massive facility. Not every lane is the same. The only safe approach? Pack. As if you'll be asked to pull out your liquids bag. If the lane you're in uses CT scanning and nobody asks you to remove it, great, that's a smoother morning. But if you pack, assuming you don't have to comply, and you end up in a traditional lane, you've got a problem. This brings us to the items that are actually getting confiscated most often in 2026, because it's not always the items people expect. The obvious ones still happen. Full-size shampoo bottles, oversized sunscreens, water bottles that people somehow forget are full. Those are the classics. But the more interesting pattern is the category of items travelers genuinely believe are fine. And they're wrong. Peanut butter. TSA classifies it as a gel. A standard jar of peanut butter in your carry-on doesn't make it through. Same goes for hummus, Nutella, jam, honey, and most nut butters. These are gel consistency foods, and they fall under the 3-1-1 rule the same as any other gel. If you're packing snacks for a flight, those items need to be in sealed, store-bought travel sizes of under 3.4 ounces, or they go in your checked bag. A lot of people find this out the hard way. Aerosol dry shampoos are another frequent casualty. The bottles look small and travel-friendly, but many popular sizes, 4 ounces, 5 ounces, exceed the limit. Check the can before you pack it. Some brands do make genuine travel-size versions that are under 3.4 ounces. Those are fine. The standard drugstore sizes usually aren't. Oversized perfume and cologne bottles get pulled constantly. The small rollerballs and travel sprays are generally compliant. The regular bottles that come in gift sets, typically 1 to 2 fluid ounces up to 3.4 is fine, but anything above that limit does not pass. If you're not sure, check the bottle. The volume is on the label. Snow globes fall under liquid rules too. TSA considers them a liquid container because of the water inside, and most snow globes exceed the allowable limit. If you're bringing one home as a gift, It should go in your checked bag if you want to guarantee it makes it there with you. The pattern across all of these is the same. Travelers assume a product is in a solid or non-liquid category, when TSA classifies it differently. When in doubt, check TSA's official "What Can I Bring" database before you leave home. It's searchable, it's current, and it will tell you exactly how your item is classified. That database has saved more products from the confiscation bin than any other tool out there. Now let's talk about the exceptions, because this is where a significant number of travelers are actually leaving real convenience behind. 3 specific categories of liquid operate under completely different rules, and if any of them apply to your situation, the standard 3-to-1-1 restriction doesn't apply to them. The first is medically necessary liquids. If you travel with prescription medications in liquid form, insulin, saline solution, or other medical liquids, that you genuinely need during your trip, TSA allows you to bring those in quantities greater than 3.4 ounces. You're not required to fit them in a quart bag. You are required to declare them to the officer at the checkpoint, meaning you proactively tell the officer you have medications before your bag goes through. They may require additional screening of those items, but the size restriction is lifted for genuine medical necessities. This also applies to liquid supplements and certain over-the-counter liquid medications if they're medically necessary for your travel. Keep them together, keep them accessible, declare them before screening, and the additional quantity is allowed. The second exception is for passengers traveling with infants and young children. Baby formula, breast milk, toddler drinks, and baby or toddler food are all permitted in quantities beyond 3.4 ounces. You don't need to fit them in a quart bag. You do need to declare them. TSA also allows the ice packs and freezer packs used to keep those items at the correct temperature, even if those packs are partially frozen or fully liquid at the time of screening. If you're traveling with a baby, this exception covers a significant portion of what you need to bring, and a lot of parents traveling for the first time don't know they have this flexibility. The third exception is more narrow and applies specifically to duty-free liquids purchased internationally. If you're arriving in the United States on an international flight with a connection and you purchased liquids at the duty-free shops in another country's airport after their security checkpoint, those items may exceed the standard size limit in your carry-on, provided they are sealed inside a transparent, tamper-evident bag provided by the retailer, and you have the original receipt showing the purchase was made within the prior 48 hours. The items still need to clear TSA screening. If anything alarms, it will require additional inspection, and this is a narrow, specific exception. It does not apply to domestic duty-free purchases or items bought before an international security checkpoint. If any of these 3 situations apply to you, understand your rights. Pack accordingly. Declare at the checkpoint. The exception is real and legitimate. There's one more change happening in 2026 that has nothing directly to do with liquids, but it is catching travelers completely off guard at the same moment they're already navigating checkpoint confusion. And it's costing people real money. Starting in February 2026, TSA began charging a $45 non-refundable fee to travelers who arrive at a security checkpoint without a real ID-compliant driver's license or an acceptable alternative like a passport. This fee is called the Confirm ID fee, and it exists because Real ID enforcement, which began in May 2025, created a massive backlog of identity verification at checkpoints. If your driver's license doesn't have the small gold or black star in the upper right corner, it is not Real ID compliant. If you're traveling domestically and you don't have that star on your license, bring your passport. If you have neither, that $45 fee is waiting for you at the checkpoint before you can pass through. And unlike checking a bag or buying a seat upgrade, you get nothing for that $45 except the right to proceed through security. It's not refundable. It doesn't apply to a future trip. It's a processing fee. Full stop. This is relevant to the liquids conversation because it's a financial trap that can hit at the exact moment a traveler is also dealing with a confiscated item or a pulled bag. The compounding effect of a checkpoint surprise can add real cost and stress to what was supposed to be a smooth morning. Check your license before your next trip. Look for the star. If it's not there, travel with your passport. 8 weeks before you... Travel date is the recommended lead time to get a real ID if you don't currently have one. That process goes through your state's DMV and requires a visit in person. Don't leave it until the week before your flight. By this point, you have the full picture of what's happening and why. Now, let's turn that into a system, because knowing rules and having a repeatable process are two different things, and the goal is to never lose an item at a checkpoint again. Start with your liquids before you even open a suitcase. Get a dedicated quart-sized clear bag. Keep it stocked with your travel size essentials. The same bag, the same products, ready to go for any trip. When you're not traveling, it sits in a drawer, fully packed. When you are, it goes straight into your carry-on. The travelers who consistently get through security without incident are the ones who've made this automatic, not something they reassemble from scratch each trip. When you're restocking that bag or adding new items, check container sizes. Don't assume. Read the label. 3.4 ounces is 100 milliliters. That number appears on the label of every product sold for consumer use. If the label says 150 milliliters, it doesn't fit the rule. Transfer the product into a smaller travel bottle if you want to bring it, or buy a travel size. Keep the bag near the top or in the most accessible outer pocket of your carry-on, even if you're flying into a CT-equipped lane where you won't be asked to remove it. There's still a possibility you'll be directed to a different lane, or that additional screening pulls your bag. Having that quart bag easy to reach, not buried under your laptop and shoes, saves time and prevents you from holding up the line while you dig. For food items, apply the same discipline. If it spreads or flows, it follows the liquid rules. Solid food, granola bars, nuts, crackers, fruit, sandwiches, travels without restriction in carry-on bags. Gel consistency food does not. Sort your snacks before you pack. And for anything you're not certain about, any product whose category you genuinely don't know, TSA's What Can I Bring search tool on tsa.gov is your pre-trip reference. Type in the product. It tells you the rule. 2 minutes of checking at home is worth more than any amount of confidence at the checkpoint. One situation that doesn't come up enough in travel guides is what to do when the officer's instructions contradict what you've read on tsa.gov. It happens. Screening is conducted by individual officers who have discretion, and procedures can genuinely vary by airport, by terminal, and even by lane. If an officer tells you something that doesn't match your understanding of the rule, the right response is not to argue at the checkpoint. Follow the officer's instruction in the moment. TSA officers have legal authority at that checkpoint, and debating federal policy while a line of people waits behind you is not a productive use of anyone's time. And it won't get your item back. If something is confiscated that you believe was compliant, you have options after the fact. TSA has a formal process for feedback and inquiries at tsa.gov. You can also contact TSA directly through their Ask TSA feature on social platforms, or call the TSA contact center. If an item of significant value was taken, and you believe the confiscation was in error, document it. Write down the date, airport, terminal, and what was taken as soon as you're past the checkpoint. That documentation supports any follow-up inquiry. The bigger point is this: avoid the scenario entirely by packing conservatively. If an item lives in a gray area, if you've been told different things by different sources, put it in your checked bag or ship it to your destination. A $20 bottle of something is not worth the checkpoint friction. The system works smoothly when you pack to the clearest, most conservative interpretation of the rule. Let's bring this together. The TSA Liquids rule itself has not changed. 3.4 ounces per container, 1 quart-sized bag, 1 bag per passenger. That federal standard applies at every TSA checkpoint in the country, and it's not going anywhere in 2026. What has changed is the checkpoint experience, specifically at airports using CT scanner technology, where you may no longer be asked to remove your liquids bag from your carry-on during screening. That is a convenience upgrade, not a rule change. Pack the same compliant items regardless. The items most commonly lost are the ones travelers misclassify, Gel consistency foods, oversized aerosols, and full-size bottles that look travel-sized but aren't. Know your container sizes. Know how TSA classifies what you're carrying. 3 legitimate exceptions exist: medically necessary liquids, formula, and breast milk, for infants and young children, and qualifying international duty-free purchases. If any of those apply, you have more flexibility than the standard rule suggests. But declare appropriately at the checkpoint. Check your ID before your trip. If your license doesn't carry the real ID star, bring your passport or budget for a $45 fee you absolutely don't want to pay. And build a system. The same quart bag, stocked and ready, removes the decision-making from every trip you take. The travelers who consistently move through security cleanly aren't lucky. They're prepared. If this cleared up the confusion you've been running into around TSA checkpoint rules in 2026, consider subscribing for more up-to-date, practical travel preparation content. New checkpoint policies, airline rule changes, and packing strategies get covered here regularly, so that you're walking into the airport informed, not finding out how things work the hard way, in the bin, in front of 100 people. Safe travels. Go get through that checkpoint.